Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from McDonald's Nation, back with another post-race podcast. We have a special guest today, a member of the team, Eugene, 72 years old, doesn't look a day over 60, loves the half-Ironman distance. He just recently raced and earned a roll-down slot to Worlds in Finland, which I want to learn all about, including how you pronounce that city. He's done a ton of races, over 30 since the half-Iron distance since 2010. I'm reading his bio, which I really appreciate your organization. And he's done 6 full Ironman races in that time range as well. In the Worlds, this is going to be your 5th time around the Worlds, which is incredible. You've been a long-time member of the team, and I'm excited to have you on to just not only talk about competitive racing for you and what that means and what drives you, but just to learn a little bit more about maybe some of your secrets to racing, because we can all get better. So, Eugene, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, totally. I'm super excited. All right, I did a little bio thing in the beginning there, and thanks for sending it along. But what brought you to triathlon? What was your path? Did you start out as a triathlete, or were you a runner or a cyclist?
In college, high school and college was cross country and track. And
Okay.
I did race 1 year in track in junior college.
Okay.
But Vietnam was
Mhm.
calling. We were going through not a draft, but a
Mhm.
lottery. My lottery number
Okay.
was low, and my academic grades were also low. So Highline invited me to leave, and I had to join the military. And so that's what I did. It allowed me to grow up and realize the importance of education.
Mhm.
But so that 4 years was actually well worth it. I was fortunate that I didn't have to see action in Vietnam. I was mostly on
Mhm.
ships and stationed on ships through Southeast Asia. But we did take Marines to Vietnam, drop them off, and pick up last year's Marines and bring them back to Japan. So we were
Okay.
doing this circuit back in those days. But when I got out of the military, then enrolled at the University of Washington. But my passion was always track and running. And
Mm.
so I
Okay.
was a 10K marathon guy. So I ran
Okay.
as many 10Ks, as many as half marathons, and as many marathons as I could. I stayed in the military as a reservist, and I joined the National Guard marathon team.
Mm.
And the tip of the iceberg there was the Marine Corps marathon. So if we were a
Right.
good enough state team, we could qualify to go to Washington, D.C. and run in that race.
Okay.
And I think I set a PR sometime in the 80s
Mhm.
at that Marine Corps in Washington, D.C. About 3:03 was my time.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
and then I had a number of 3 hours and 2 minutes. I just had a really
Right.
tough time breaking 3 hours. One was in
Mhm.
Nebraska. That's where the National Guard would have their race.
Okay.
And so I ran a boatload of race marathons there, and
Mhm.
probably ran a dozen marathons, Seattle marathons over the
Okay.
years. But in the mid to later 80s, my oldest son was doing
Mhm.
triathlons, and he had joined a local club,
Mhm.
and he really encouraged me to join. So I did, and we
Mhm.
raced a number of years together. And he ended up
Awesome.
morphing off into mountain biking, and I stayed with triathlon.
Okay.
And I had a lot of success doing sprints in Olympic distance. And I was always in the mix, a top 10, 15%. But I wasn't quite ready to break out and do the half. It took me a lot of years to find the
Mhm.
courage to do that. And I found after doing 2 or 3 of them that I really
Mhm.
loved that distance.
Okay.
And so I started doing those races in the probably in the 90s, and then started really wanted to do Ironman as well. Coeur d'Alene was the closest to my home, and so
Okay.
those first 3 Ironmen were in Coeur d'Alene. And I was about a
Mhm.
12:30 guy back in the
Okay.
early days, and then my last race, my last Ironman, was in Boulder. I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago, and that was about 14 hours.
Okay.
But I continued to do halves, had
Mhm.
injuries along the way. I
Sure.
had one ruptured Achilles tendon. I had
Mhm.
most recently was a posterior tibial tear, had that surgically
Mhm.
repaired. I've had
Mhm.
plateau fractures, but I've always been able to come back. And people would say, it's time for you to retire. I've never felt like retiring, A, and B,
Hmm.
I love competition. I love the Ironman. And I love running and I love cycling and I love all three venues. And I'm pretty consistently a 3 day a week cyclist. I try to get 4 rides in a week and I try to run every other day, but I try my best to follow the plans that are given to me.
Okay.
And I get great feedback both from Matt and yourself on my training. And I like to let you all in on how I'm doing. So whenever I see a request to say how it's going, I always like to fill that in.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, like what I was saying before we joined in, I think a large part of the team is paying it forward and just learning how people race, what they do. I also came from a running background, not to the sport, and I definitely enjoyed some early success because most triathletes weren't great runners when they started. So at least I felt like I was always strong at the end of the event
Yeah.
until I started getting, as you get more competitive, then you have to get good at all the other things too,
Right.
which can be a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be curious for you, what do you, you started off as a runner, but then if we were to ask you now, what's your go-to discipline where you're like, okay, this is where I get to, have my fun, but also make great progress within the race.
I recognize that it's important for me to work on my weakest venue, which is cycling. And it's getting to the point to where sometimes the other athletes are so far ahead by the time I get to the run that I may not be able to catch them. It was always my strategy, come from behind
Right.
and pass all those guys that passed me on the bike.
Sure.
But there's a point of you can't, as good a runner as you might be, you can't always catch those
Mhm.
guys. But running, for sure, I'm almost always first out of the water. So I'm a really
Okay.
strong swimmer for my age. So swimming has been about the same, about 40 minutes for 1.2, 38 to 40 minutes, but I've been able to keep that consistent over the years, but I
Okay.
haven't increased my swim speed. My bike this year, for some reason, is a little slower than I'd like it to be, and so I'm working hard on that.
Mhm.
My running continues to be, it had really took a hit when I had this posterior tibial surgery
Yeah.
about 20 months ago. And I could only run about a 12-minute mile. Now I'm touching the last mile there in St. George was 9 minutes. And
Nice.
that's the first time I've touched 9 minutes in 18 months. And so obviously it's there. And I need to trust in that and work on that
Mhm.
and improve
Mhm.
on that. But at the same time, I need to improve my hill climbing and
Mhm.
my cycling.
Yeah.
And so,
Also, I
yeah,
was going to say, also you need to stay healthy too, right? I feel as
right.
though you have insight from your experience, like managing injuries and knowing, having bumped up against the line and crossed it a couple of times to know, ooh, I can do X, but I can't do 2X or X plus two. I have to
Right.
feel those areas out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I've had those challenges. The biggest challenge I had was in 2019. I had while I was doing a swim workout, a coach swim
Mhm.
workout, had a heart attack in the
Mhm.
pool, and I had a little bit of denial, and I wouldn't let the coach call 911, and I drove myself home, which of course was a mistake. But my wife, being quite assertive, drove me to the emergency room. And I
Mhm.
told her to
Mhm.
take me to an urgent care, and she wouldn't do that. Anyway, fortunately, I had some flow during
Mhm.
this event, and they were able to put 3 stents in. So
Okay.
that artery in my heart was the LAD. So I had 3 stents put in, and I knew almost instantly that my heart was well again. I knew
Mhm.
my pipes were clean, and I was no longer short of breath. I wanted to come back sooner from that, but
Mhm.
the local triathlon club who I was
Mhm.
swimming with wouldn't let me back with them
Oh,
until I went
sure.
through 50 sessions of cardiac rehab. And so
Okay.
I did that. And
Mhm.
my career is in medicine. I'm a retired physician
Yeah.
assistant, and I did cardiology. So I became not only, their star cardiac rehab patient, because instead of
Mhm.
walking on a treadmill, I was running 8-minute
Mhm.
miles on a treadmill, but I
Right.
was also helping them because I was qualified and credentialed at the very same hospital where
Okay.
I was getting my cardiac rehab. So I helped the nurses as much as I was being helped.
Nice.
And so I'd help patients get up and down. I actually found that very rewarding, in that
Mm,
that those 3 months or 4 months of cardiac rehab forced me to slow down, decide what I wanted to do, and give me a
mhm.
little insight to the importance, how important this was to me
Yeah. Mhm,
as a triathlete.
mhm.
It was hugely important, and so I'm pretty compliant, 100% compliant with my medicines, and
Okay.
uh, and I bet my wife cooks a pretty good Mediterranean diet,
Mm,
and just doing all the things I need to do.
okay.
And so for a lot of reasons, triathlon and continuing to improve is critically important to me.
Yeah. No, I really want to dive in that. First, I have to give you a hard time because I love how you included like tendon issues and stress fractures before we talked about a heart attack, just in the ratio of injuries and setbacks. But I do want to touch on the setback piece for you because I think that's really insightful. A lot of times when athletes experience setbacks, they talk about all the things they can't do. I can't run. They tell me I can't bike. I can't sweat. I can't, like, it's full of can'ts. And I really appreciate that it really struck you about how important it was for you as a person, right? Like that sort of the lifestyle of being active and the opportunity to train and race and so on. And that you were got into that. How you strike me as someone who's fairly observant, sort of overall, but how did you find a way to stay connected when you knew you couldn't do the things, right? Like aside from being helpful at the hospital, like what was your
Yeah, that's tough, because while I couldn't while I couldn't get in the water with and
Mhm,
swim with the team
mhm,
that's raised the bar locally, that's where I
mhm.
would do my swim training. I just went to the pool on my own,
Okay.
and I would try to get there when I knew other teammates were swimming,
Okay.
and so would have our mini own training camp.
Oh, okay.
And I kept active that way. Those 4 months also, I was doing a lot of walking,
Mhm.
so I was probably walking as many or more miles than I was running, and then I got into the Zwift training, and so I was doing 18 to 20 miles 3 or 4 days a week on my own,
Okay.
and I could talk virtually to people online, and so those were the ways I stayed connected, and then started coming back by doing 5Ks, 10K races,
Okay.
and my first triathlon back, I think I did a sprint,
Mhm.
and then I did a couple of Olympics, and I slowly accelerated
Okay.
over the next year, and yeah,
Mhm.
that took me out about a year.
Yeah,
Um,
sure. Yeah. No, it's hard. I think it's hard to balance that. People say it's like having a kid, right? We say you can't stay out late. So what is the one thing the kid wants to do? They want to stay out late, right? And so you can't run. People are like, I want to run. Like you just said, I can't do it. I appreciate how you found your path forward, but I think that core message of having the endurance lifestyle and the people associated with it and the activity and the social side, I don't know if younger athletes really appreciate that value. Sure, you're on my Instagram feed, or you're not on my Instagram feed, or you liked my comment. But to me, there's a huge power in the endurance sports space, which is the people. And so I'm really appreciative of you for bringing that up. I do have another question for you. One thing that's happened to me and with my recoveries is that people will say, "Oh, hey, good thing you're active and fit because I'm sure it got you a little bit in trouble, but if you aren't active and fit, this recovery isn't a year, it's 2 years, or maybe you never recover." Just curious for you, being in your 70s, I'm presuming you are a significant statistical outlier relative to your peers. What is what like yeah, aside from just giving us general advice, like stay with multisport, but I'm just curious, what is that experience like for you?
yeah, I don't feel 72, but I guess when I
Mhm.
look in the mirror, I guess I
Mm,
I think there's a big mental and emotional component to that. I do see the world in living
mm,
color. I see the glass half full instead of half empty. And I generally have a pretty happy and gregarious nature, I think. I think I've
mhm,
been told that. I go through life, I try to do random acts of kindness instead of maybe being the other way. So I
mhm.
recognize that there's a lot of tough things happening in the United States, but I think just a simple act of holding a door for somebody or smiling as you walk past them, a kind comment. goes a long way. So I think attitude. I had a really good medical career, 41 years, and I had a 28-year Army Reserve career. So I've set in my
Mhm.
retirement, and now I have time. And I, as long as I'm doing my chores around here and doing all the things I need to
Mhm.
do at home first, I can train. And I love that. Training is
Mhm.
valuable to me almost as racing, although I got to say, when I see an Endurance Nation teammate at a race, it's pretty cool. I ran
Cool.
into Stephanie Stevens at
Yes.
this last race. And so we saw each other on the bike a number of
Mhm.
times. We saw each other on the run because it was a two looper. And I felt that we gave each other a lot of support
Yeah.
during that. And we had a nice chat after the race. And so it was really
Mhm.
nice to meet her, but that's been true of all the races I've done where you get a chance to catch up and meet. So I guess I have a positive attitude. I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy to be here.
We're happy you're here too. And I appreciate that. I think what I'm hearing from you too is that you have a choice, right? You don't have to be competitive in a reductionist manner, right? I'm here to eliminate the competition. You want to challenge them, and that's part of what friends do. They support one another, and they also challenge each other. And also, I think if you are so singular in your focus, you can miss out on all the good things that are going on around you, like you said, meeting Stephanie or meeting teammates, or just, for example, enjoying a great day of racing. People talk about the day when they race, and they just talk about like chop, headwind, heat. I'm like, those are all the components of an amazing day that happened for you to race. It's hard to break it down
Yeah.
and see that. So I appreciate your big picture perspective. I love that. I also like that you have to do your chores. You're not alone. When I look at Al Truscott and some of our other athletes who fall in your age bracket, they're very clear that they are doing their chores. And I don't know if that's a function of just years of being married and knowing, hey, I've got to fill my duties before I go have fun. But I love that aspect as well. I think
Uh,
it's so true.
yeah.
That's so
Yesterday
fun.
was window cleaning day after I
Oh,
did my 10K, and we're having a heat wave here, and the temperature in Seattle is in the 90s.
oh my
And
goodness.
so, of course, when I got to the front of the house, which faces south, I think up against that glass, I was in 90-degree heat, and I was torched after that.
I bet you were.
And then I was
Wow.
also hot during my run. It took me back to Hawaii a little bit.
I was gonna say, a little flashback there for sure.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah,
funny. I love it. I think it's all I think there's joy in movement, right? Just being active and doing things, whether it's chores or your sport or whatever, and in service of others is also a big part of it too. And I find, like you mentioned, saying hi to Steph, I feel that too. Like it's I always tell people to smile when they race, like first time racers, especially. Like we just had Akshay did his first Olympic race, and I said, hey, you got to say thank you to all the people that you can, right? Not necessarily
yeah,
to a police officer in an intersection as you're riding through it. Hey, the aid station people or the swim start people or
yeah.
whatever.
But I do
I
thank
think
them. I thank
Mhm.
those policemen.
I bet you do.
Yeah,
But I think for me, it's when it just turns into more positivity. I think this is a great metaphor for life.
right,
They say, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" I love seeing the police officer on the side of the road, especially when in the running races, because usually someone in the morning they're not really working, so sometimes I'll have a cup of coffee, and I'm like, "Oh, finally, it's my aid station, the coffee aid station." I hold out my hand. They never they're usually like that. They're not getting the coffee, but you have to have. I think it has to be fun, and there's
yeah,
some I think there's something about racing and being your authentic self. Like this, for me, when I'm racing, that's the happiest that I am. Like I love my family and I love serving. I have my faith, but when I'm in motion and I'm in that space and I'm surrounded by people and we're all doing this thing together, that's my version of an amazing rock concert with our favorite song playing. There's something just the vibe of it is phenomenal. I just can't get enough. It sounds like it also
yeah.
resonates with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the vibe of a race is critically important. As I came in off my bike in St. George, I had been having a bit of a pity party the last 10 miles as I'm coasting down that hill from the summit,
Oh yeah.
And there was a headwind, and I thought, oh, great, I got a headwind. But once I got off the bike and I started the run, I knew I could have a fairly good, decent run. And it was a
Hmm.
little bit tough getting started there, those first 2 city blocks, but then you make a left-hand turn, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden, the streets are lined for 6 blocks going east and west and with 4,000 people cheering.
Wow.
And I thought,
Mhm.
"Wow, I'm not tired anymore." And I really decided to get busy, get down to business, and not have any more pity party. I thought maybe I can salvage this day. And I almost waited too long to do that, but
Mhm.
I had a good run and
Mhm.
was passing a lot of people that had passed me on the bike, and I felt
Mhm.
pretty good
Mhm.
about that, and the run salvaged my day.
You put in a 9-minute mile at the end. You found the mojo for
I
sure
did.
by the end. That's amazing. So how did you finish the race? Are you aware? I never am aware of where I am in my age group. Sometimes people will say things to me, but my brain doesn't work super well. I just know if I'm having a good day for me or a non-good day. Did you know where you were finish wise or?
I didn't know where I was overall. I
Mhm.
suspected I was way back, but my wife said to me, I had a chance to see her twice on that return, the first loop.
Okay.
Um, you come into town and you make a left and
Mhm.
you leave the folks, but you come back through a second time, and she started a conversation. You got to pick it up, and then as I and then as I came past her another mile
Okay.
later, she says, "Vince says if you pass these 4 guys, you have a
Mhm.
chance to make the podium."
Oh,
And so my son at home had been following the race
okay.
and knew where I stood. So while I wasn't wired, messages were going from my son to my wife, who was passing them on to me about
Mhm.
needing to pick it up and that I was in the mix, but I was still behind and I need to go faster.
Okay.
So
Love it.
so I had a 10K and I love to do 10Ks.
Mhm.
The grade coming from mile 9 into mile 13 is a 1 to 2% grade downhill in St.
Right.
George. And man, I thought, "Oh man, I gotta make that turn in that golf course and come back and I'm gonna fly down that hill." And that's what I did. And yeah, I think the message there is don't give up on yourself. You're not done racing. There's still a chance.
Mhm.
Those guys ahead of you are also suffering.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Definitely.
I thought, I'm feeling pretty good. And so I might as well go for it. And I didn't feel that on the bike. I was suffering a mile 20 to 40. But anyway,
Such a tough course.
yeah.
It's yeah.
But yeah, I guess the message is don't ever give up on yourself and keep
Mm,
plugging. Even if you don't podium, even if you finish
right.
last. And I have finished
Mhm.
last before.
Sure.
You did it. You finished it. Okay.
Mhm.
You just build from
Right.
there.
Exactly. I love that. I think kudos to you for turning it around, but I find that being able to do that, to your point, it wasn't like somebody gave you a special supplement or you had some sort of struck by lightning moment. It was like, oh, all of a sudden I found purpose, right? I was like, I've got something I know I'm familiar with. Now I have a challenge or a mission for myself, and now I'm gonna go do that thing. And then you're sort of back into it. Like I
Right.
think the
Yeah,
mental side of racing, particularly on the run in a triathlon, is just so important.
it
Um,
is.
you know.
And it can be awesome. I decided, how can I go faster? And I thought, okay, instead of having one Gatorade, I'll have two.
Okay.
And so I started doing that, and I thought perhaps I could hydrate better. Maybe that'll give me a lift, and it did. It worked.
Okay. That's fantastic.
And so I doubled up on my
All right. That's
nutrition.
smart. It's right. It's not just hopes and dreams. You need it. You need the food. You need the calories.
Right,
So I think that's another sign of experience for you, not just
right.
someone half your age would say, run faster. And you're like, ooh, fuel and then run faster.
Yeah, so I decided, what could I do? So fueling, doing that, once I figured that
Mhm.
out, it was that was also okay. I got two things going for me, so I'm feeling pretty good, and I can fuel better. And
I love it. That's fantastic. Okay, so well, we got a few minutes left here. Let's talk about this. Okay, so now 70-point worlds. I'm presuming you knew it was in Finland before the race, but did you actually do any sort of research on it, or were you just go back to Worlds?
no, no research. Um, I've cycled the course already on Ruvi
Okay.
since I got back. But you know what's weird about that is I knew Finland was a choice should you get a slot. I wasn't
Hmm.
counting on that, but I was trying to get a slot. And what motivated me was Ironman had a few extra slots at the St. George race because this is a North American championship. So I think instead of 30, there were 45 slots. And being
Oh,
a 72-year-old guy, usually we only get one slot. So I had to be pretty high, and I had to count on the fact that maybe the guys who were faster than me had already gotten a slot.
oh, I see. Okay.
And I hung out for the roll down, and my name was called up right away because they knew that the other two guys had already been selected. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And then I was told by other triathletes, well, you're going there, you're not going to be able to get a condominium and anywhere to stay. And my
Mm.
wife was able to go to the Ironman travel agency, and she got a slot before we were home from the venue.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Amazing.
that afternoon, we got a place to stay, and then we started talking about, oh, this is going to cost a lot of money. But I told her, I said, I'm 72. I don't know how many more chances at this I'm going to have. I need to take this. I really like the course. I can tell I'm
Okay.
going to like the course, and so I'm pretty excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, you should be for sure. Well, you earn it for sure. And it sounds like your wife is actually like a phenomenal teammate. I think she may be a large part of your success.
She's a large part of my success.
Yes, I hear
She
that for
is.
sure.
It's not always easy for her because they're
Yeah,
long
right?
days and there's a lot of waiting, and it's hot, and but she knows where to find the local library and get into air conditioned spaces, or
Wait a minute.
or
I think I need to do a podcast with her just to how to spectate properly.
yeah,
Maybe that's our second version.
she knows how.
Okay.
She knew how in Coeur d'Alene to find air
Okay.
conditioned spaces at the local hotel when we were doing Ironman. And
Nice. All right. So how, okay, between now and Finland, you've got some training time. It sounds like you're going to fill it with some other races. Like
yeah,
what's going to be your focus for the rest of the season in terms of getting ready for that race?
yeah, primarily as far as the three
Mhm.
venues, I need to maintain the swim. I think I can get a little bit faster even in that.
Mhm.
And soon I'll start open water locally. The lakes are still, I think, 50 in the mid 50s here, but
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to be doing a lot of open water swims for that, along with the pooled
Mhm.
workouts, at least 2 days,
Mhm.
and then a day or two of open water. And then on the bike, I'm going to probably ramp up my distance and my climbing skills on the bike,
Okay. Okay.
and then on the run maintain. But I think I can push it a little bit. I have to be careful with that left foot not to overdo it. But
Yeah,
so I think
exactly.
25 miles a week is a good week of
Hmm.
running, and
Totally.
I'll probably do more fartlek running.
Okay.
Um,
Smart.
so that was something I did a lot in college and
Hmm.
after college, and I'm just gonna do that. There's a physical therapist in the swimming group who does a
Hmm.
track workout on Monday afternoons, and so I'm
Okay.
gonna try to. And there's about 20 athletes that go to his workouts, and so
Great.
I'm gonna start doing some track workouts. Hopefully, he'll let me do 250s instead of 440s at first, just a little
Yes.
slower to begin. I don't want to.
100%.
I don't want to do long sprints at first,
No.
um, I think he'll be kind to me. I hope.
I think so. I think so. But you're training for worlds. I think you can find a
Yeah.
way. But I
So, so I
appreciate
was
you.
so I was thinking of those things, and I don't think I have to do anything nutrition wise as far as my regular diet. You know, I'm getting close to optimal weight.
Okay.
If I had lost weight, it might be 2 or 3 pounds, but that's all.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's hard, especially when you just raced too. You're pretty fit to begin with. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm fatigued. This week I'm tired, but
Oh,
it's the first week after I raced. It's okay that I'm tired.
100%. I just came back from my trip, my trip I did to Spain, and it took me all of last week to feel like a human being again. And the combination of the training and the jet lag was brutal for
No,
me.
and I was followed that
Mm.
300-mile race of yours, and I
Mm.
just thought, "Oh my gosh." I think I commented on that.
Yeah. You
But,
did. Yes, we've all got our own little things to something. I need a motivation. I need a carrot out there. So
and
for
then
me, it was the travel, seeing the
yeah.
people.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's the great thing of
Mm.
having you be the coach is you and Matt as well, as I can see
Mhm.
you guys are both out there doing more than I can do, and
Mm.
it's pretty impressive.
Well, we got to keep up with the Joneses. You're not, I think if we were to do some sort of age graded scale of awesomeness, you're pretty high up there, my friend.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
don't dismiss yourself by any means. This has
Yeah.
been fantastic, Eugene. Thank you for clicking all the buttons and getting in here and just sharing your perspective. I appreciate it. And hopefully we can recap maybe after Finland. You can tell us a little bit about it and
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
understand what that's like. I know there's some
Yeah.
athletes who like to go, who are interested in qualifying for and going for worlds, but don't understand that experience. So maybe next time we can touch more on sort of
Yeah,
your
I'd
experience
love
doing
to
those
do that.
events. All right.
Love to do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All
Well, I
right.
appreciate your
Well,
time.
same. Thank you so much. Enjoy getting into the schedule. I look forward to seeing the workouts trickle in and
Oh,
keep the energy coming. I think right now you and I are directing all of our energy to Steph Stevens as she hopefully recovers speedily from her treadmill
yeah.
mishap. But then we can go forth and do awesome things. So I'll be in touch. Okay.
Me as well.
All right. Take care,
Okay.
Eugene. Thank you so much.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye bye.